Hi, Russ. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
I'm glad you are here. You are really into football, something that I have to admit I know very little about. So I'm so curious as to what you have to say about that, and specifically women's football, something that maybe even people who are into football aren't that aware of. So let's get to that as soon as we can. But before we do, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do for a living, where you come from, and how you got to the point of writing a book like this?
Well, I played football when I was a younger man. I was born in Nebraska, in Ainsworth, Nebraska. So I played for the Ainsworth Bulldogs. And then I went off to university at Chadron State College out in the panhandle of Nebraska. I started teaching high school. I taught high school in South Dakota and Iowa. I coached football in both places and coached wrestling in Iowa as well. And then that wasn't getting it done, so I went back and got my PhD at the University of Nebraska Lincoln and found this job here at Ohio Northern University in Ada, Ohio, which has the distinction of being the home of the Wilson Football Factory. So every football that's used by the NFL is made here in Ada. It's a town of about 6,000 people. So I've been teaching here for this is my 18th year, and I am a professor of history.
Hmm, interesting story. I'm pretty sure in my life I've had a Wilson football, toss it around a bit. Oh, cool.
No doubt, yeah,
Yeah.
they're everywhere.
Yeah.
In fact, it's weird. Most of the women who play football or American football, if you will, tackle football, use a Wilson. The two major leagues in the United States certainly use Wilsons, and from what I've seen, most of the women around Europe, in North Africa, in Latin America also use Wilsons.
Let's get to your book, Women's American Football. It is a fairly hefty book. I think it's like over 300 pages,
Mm-hmm.
and it was published last November, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
Okay. Well, tell me a little bit about your passion for women's football and what made you write the book.
Well, my first book, second book after publishing my dissertation, my second book was on American football in France and the people who play it there. And I came across some women playing in France. There was a new team in 2012, the Sparkle of, let's see, Villeneuve Saint Georges, who were playing football. They couldn't. They were the only team in France, so they had to play the Spanish national team. But I thought after I published the book on French, the French playing football, I thought women playing football would be a good idea. I didn't want to, write about something that the Super Bowl or something like that that a thousand other people had written about. So I was looking around for the unusual stories about football. And that's where I saw my first football game at Anières-sur-Seine. It's a suburb of Paris in the north. And so I watched the championship of the Fédération Française de Football Américain um, women's championship there. The Molos, the Bulldogs of Anières-sur-Seine versus the Argonauts of Montpellier. Uh, so it was interesting, and I came back and started doing research on that, and that ballooned into the book.
Interesting. I hope this doesn't sound like an ignorant question because I know nothing about women's football. Um, is it really rough and tumble like men's football as well?
Yes, yes, it's the same sport,
Hmm.
basically. Um, Sometimes when you have girls leagues like high school and middle school girls leagues, they have a few different rules. Maybe they don't do the kicking game, but for the adult women who play, it's the same game as the men's game.
Right, right. I'm kind of reminded of roller derby. I think in the 70s that was kind of a big thing. Women rolling around and just smashing into each other and stuff.
Hmm.
So I don't know why it made me question whether women can be rough and tumble. Obviously, they can be. Do you happen to coach a women's football team?
No, no, I stopped coaching in, well, Iowa. I coached the freshmen for a little bit, but I haven't coached since.
Okay.
I did stand on the sidelines with the Ohio Northern University Polar Bears one week, but that's about it.
Yeah.
I didn't do any coaching.
Mhm. American football, or the football that you're talking about, is so very much tied to the American culture,
Hmm.
much like baseball is, I suppose, but even more so. It's a representative it's almost militaristic that you talk about lines and moving forward and getting into the end zone and all that. I've fascinated myself with football, and of course, I watch the Super Bowl because it's just something to watch, and it's just fascinating. That I don't mind watching, and it really is like military. Do you see it that way too?
Oh, there's a long history of that. I think the my favorite quote I heard a woman talking about playing football, uh, Danilin Welniak or something like that. I can't remember her name exactly, but she said it's like legalized assault. I can assault someone and not be taken to jail for it. And so the women love that violent aspect of the game. Uh, it's what was it? The violence is as American as apple pie. So there are a lot of women who like that, and not just in the United States, Canada, in Europe, as I said, in North Africa and Latin America. There are a lot of women who really like knocking the stuffing out of their fellow woman.
Yeah, sure, why not? I mean, they're well padded, they're all got gear on, so why not? And they can get injured just like men do. If it's the
Hmm.
wrong tackle, I suppose, you can hurt your neck, and that's just part of the game, I suppose.
It is.
Yeah.
I talked to probably a freshman or a sophomore in high school in Salt Lake City. She played in the Utah Girls Tackle Football League, and she was telling me that she broke a bone in her arm, but she didn't tell her coach about it because he would have made her sit out. And and so these women are just as tough as the men,
Sure.
and sometimes make probably not smart decisions, just like the men.
Hmm. Men are always going to be stronger in most cases than women.
Hmm.
So, what kind of game do they play? Does it, how should I ask this? Are the scores higher or lower by standards to a men's football league? Or does
Well,
it
if you look at the NFL, they have the catchphrase that on any given Sunday, any team can beat any other team. So
okay.
they work their rules so that they'll have equity across the league. Most, they're not a lot of blowouts. Most of the games are fairly close. In the women's game, that's not so much the case. There are some teams that have a lot more players. They have players in better shape. They have more talented players, and there are a lot of lopsided scores in women's tackle football,
Okay.
which is a bit of a problem for the game. When you
Yeah.
get to the championship games, you generally see some very close games and hard fought games. But when you get into the regular season, there are a lot of blowouts.
Hmm.
There's a lot of different talent levels.
Yeah. Well, we know that professional sports is a very costly thing. Like contracts are given, large amounts of money given to certain players because they play so well. A lot of money is invested in football. How does that relate to women's football? Are their budgets lower?
Oh, quite a bit. And it's the other way around. The women have to pay to play.
Wow.
They have to buy their own equipment. They have to uh, after they have their equipment, the first year players sometimes pay as much as $1,000 to play, or even more,
Hmm.
and that is over and above what they have to pay for their equipment. Now it's a little bit cheaper in Europe because they have sports federations. The governments there will sometimes pick up some of the expenses, but in the United States, it's a very expensive sport for women to play.
Yeah. Hmm. And what's the turnout for average games? Not the championships, but for regular games. Would it, I guess the turnout would be less than if it was male
Yes.
football.
Yeah, generally the most of the games I've been to, maybe 100, maybe 200. I think one game I went to in Salt Lake City, the Utah Falcons, they had maybe 1,100 at their game. They're a very popular and very successful football team, so they had a good crowd, but mostly it's friends and family.
Yeah.
There's not too many who come out, hey, there's football on today, let's go out to the game.
Hmm. In your book, do you discuss the discrimination that we've been just hearing for the last couple of minutes and some of these questions and answers that we've been discussing?
Yes. Yeah, I mean it's an integral part of excuse me, the women's game, is that they don't have the resources that the men do. In fact, there have been teams like the Oklahoma Rage, Tulsa Rage, who had to fold because they couldn't find a football field that would rent to them. So there is that. I, discrimination might be the wrong word, but there is that differential. The women have a much harder time finding places to play, sometimes finding equipment. If you're talking about, oh, I talked to one woman who was building a football team in Morocco, and just trying to find football equipment in Morocco is nearly impossible because not many people in Morocco play football.
Sure, fair enough. As far as equipment goes, though, uh, does a woman need slightly different size or shape of equipment because of their bodies not being like a man's body?
There is some different equipment. I'm not sure how many women wear them, but there are shoulder pads that are shaped for a woman's body, and I suppose those are more expensive.
I would imagine so. Sure.
Probably so.
Why
The
not?
rest of the equipment is pretty much the same.
Hmm. I was reading the write-up that you have on Amazon about your book, and if I think that's where I saw it, some mention that some women have actually graduated to the point of working within the NFL, perhaps coaching or
Hmm.
various positions that were traditionally for men before. Talk about that.
Yes. um, Sam Rappaport is a woman who played for Montreal, um, and she was a quarterback for the team. Then she got a job at USA Football, and four times in the past, the United States has played against the rest of the world in the International Federation of American Football's Women's World Championships, and the United States has won every time, sort of dominating. So Rappaport, with USA Football, the organization decided to create the Women's World Games, the Women's World Football Games, to bring in women from around the world to learn the finer points of football. And then Rappaport moved on from there to become an executive with the NFL. And there she started the Women's Career Forum, and several of the graduates of that have gone on to coach in the NFL, either as interns, but you have women such as Liz Sauer, and I'm hoping I get she's one of a pair of twins, Liz and Katie Sauer, and I'm hoping I get the right twin, but she is coaching for the San Francisco 49ers, excuse me, as a full-time coach. Um, Callie Brownson, who played for the DC Divas and was a world champion, as were both of the Sauer sisters, is the chief of staff and a tight ends coach for the Cleveland Browns. And the first woman who became a coach in the NFL on an internship was Jen Welter, Dr. Jen Welter. She coached with the Arizona Cardinals. I'm living in the past there.
Wow.
The Arizona Cardinals. And then she has been working with girls playing flag football since then. So there are all sorts of women who are executives in the NFL. There's, I think, at least one owner. And there have been quite a few, probably up to 20 or 25 women who have coached in the NFL now.
Good. Excellent. How is your book being received?
Quietly. It's a history book. They don't make that big of a splash. The women who play the sport seem to like it. Let's see. I've only seen one review. Not that I've really gone out looking for them, but I've only seen one review, and that was positive. I did get an odd email, sort of. No, I got an actual letter, which is unusual in this day and age,
It is, yeah.
from a woman who is in a master's program in Indiana, but it was anonymous. And she said, "I loved your book, but you left out this woman and this woman." So,
Mm.
you know, it's the reception has been pretty positive. Sales, yeah.
Yeah. Well, not everything's about sales, I guess. Well, I think I understand your intent, but can you put it in your own words? Like, what was your intent when you set out to write this book? It must have taken you a while. It's like 300 some odd pages. It's a pretty serious book. So what was your intent?
Well, to shed light on a story that not many people know about. As I write in I think my first sentence is, once the blinders fell off, I began to see women playing football everywhere.
Mm.
Once I found out about those women playing in France, then I said, "Oh, there's women here and women here." At the time there were 4 teams in the state of Ohio, and I learned about those. So it was to um, give them some glory. Let's
Yeah,
see, how did Herodotus put it? Give them their due meed of glory, so that people will remember them.
good.
You say it's a hefty book and it's 300 pages. I had to cut 60,000 words out of it to get Nebraska Press to publish it.
Yeah,
So I got the makings of a second volume on basically the international game.
yeah,
Most of what I have in that book is about women in the United States and a little bit in Canada.
right. I'm not fully aware in the Olympics whether there is a women's football team. Is that a thing?
Not yet.
Okay. Right.
The just 2 years ago in the summer at the World Games included flag football for the first time, men's and women's.
Okay.
Um, Mexico defeated the United States to win the championship at the World Games. And in, what year is this? 2024. In 2028, I think, the Olympics are going to have flag football in it for the first time.
Okay. Cool.
Tackle, not so much.
In your book, I know, again, I'm referring back to what I read about it on the Amazon page. There was an incident, I guess, quite a while ago where there was a professional football game. About a halftime, they had women play football. I guess it was for entertainment purposes. What was that about?
Oh, the Legends Lingerie Bowl. That was part of that. It's one chapter in my book. It's about women playing without very many clothes on at all. The Lingerie Bowl. A guy named Mitch Mortaza was watching the Super Bowl and probably saw the Puppy Bowl or something like that, little dogs running around.
Okay.
And he thought, well, maybe I can make some money off of this. So he came up with the Lingerie Bowl, basically models in lingerie playing football. And
Sure.
that morphed out into the Lingerie Football League, which changed eventually to the Legends Football League and then the X League, and is pretty much dead now.
Okay.
So the women were playing with not much clothing on at all, with very small pads. So it was, you know,
Sight to behold, I'm sure. Uh, do you happen to have a website?
yes, women playing American football. It's on Weebly, which is
Okay.
the hosting site.
And what can we see there?
So in writing this book, I interviewed around 250 women and a few men about their lives playing football. And this site is where I store all of those interviews. I've got a map that some of my students in one of my classes helped me make. I've got some other stuff around there as well, but mostly it's the interviews of the women I talk to who play football.
Well, that could be very interesting, and it'd be nice supplementary for anyone who has the book and read the book and listen to some interviews.
It would be
Sounds it
some
is
fascinating stuff from those
it
women.
is it is fascinating. Really good. Yeah. Well, Russ, before we go, I'm going to put you full frame, and you're going to give your best pitch to the people out there watching this as to why they should buy this book. You want to do that?
Sure.
All right, go for it.
All right. So it's a great book. It's a story that not many people know. If you're interested in football and you want to hear about some football being played at a very high level, this is a book to read. It's a story you probably do not know. And so if you think you know everything about football, you won't until you read this.
Excellent. Well done, sir. Well done. Wow. Almost make me want to buy the book myself for as little as
There
I
you
know
go.
about football.
It makes a great stocking stuffer.
Okay. Well, that's coming up soon, I guess.
Hmm,
It's always
soon-ish.
around the corner. Christmas
It
is
is.
always there. Well, Russ, it was a real pleasure having you on the show. And if you ever get to write your part two of this book, because you say you have some ideas that you may want to do that, you look me up again and we'll get you on here next fall or whenever you want. And I'd love to have you back on the show.
All right. Thank you, John.
You
Appreciate it.
take
I
care now.
enjoyed it. I'm just relieved that I wasn't late.
Bye for
All
now.
right. Take care.
Thank you for watching. If you like what I do here on Tell Me About Your Book, then please consider hitting that like button and leaving a comment. You can also subscribe and ring that bell because I release 2 episodes per week, one on Wednesdays and one on Saturdays. And if you are an author, I would love to hear from you. Until such time, keep on writing and be kind to one another.